When we go back 4.5 billion years to when Earth had just formed from the cosmic dust and rocks, it looked nothing like today. It was a large, molten, almost spherical blob of material held together by gravity of its own mass. This early sterile Earth was made primarily of nitrogen, iron, silicon, carbon, oxygen, and water. 4.5 billion years later, Earth's composition hasn't changed much. It is still essentially the same elements. But now it has something it didn't before: life. But what exactly is life? What do we mean when we say this plant is alive but this stone is not? And did we actually manage to create life in a lab? Let's try to answer both. This is the periodic table, a list of every element known to mankind. Everything that exists in this universe, this stone, this plant, you, me, and the sun, is made of one or more elements from the same table. So, at the most fundamental level, this plant and this stone are similar in composition. What then makes this plant alive but this stone not? To find out, we have to zoom out from the atomic level to the cellular level, to a cell. This is probably the best differentiator I could find between life and non-life. A cell, the basic unit of all life on Earth. Life, simply put, is a collection of cells working together. This yeast that we add to flour to make fluffy bread is a single-celled organism. An adult human is a collection of about 37 trillion cells. And a blue whale is a collection of about 100 quadrillion cells. But what is a cell? And what makes a cell so special that anything composed of it becomes life? That's exactly what I wanted to know. So I took a peek inside a cell, and it is a world of its own. Before we start, I want to make a deal. You promise me you won't leave midway just because you hear some complex sounding terminology, and I promise to make you get a sense of what a cell is by the end of this video. Deal? Let's begin. A typical animal cell is enclosed by a cell membrane, two layers of molecules that control what enters and leaves the cell, like a security guard. Inside this membrane is the cytoplasm, a fluid that forms the cellular atmosphere where all the activity takes place. Floating in the cytoplasm are various organelles, like the nucleus, which contains DNA, the instruction manual for running the cell, ribosomes that read this instruction manual to manufacture proteins, Golgi apparatus, the cell's transport center that packages and delivers proteins to wherever they are needed, whether inside the cell, at the membrane, or outside it, lysosomes, the housekeepers that break down worn-out parts, invading microbes and waste, and recycle their components for reuse, and lastly, the mitochondria, as we all know, as the energy generators which process oxygen we breathe and nutrients from the food we consume. Together, these microscopic structures work continuously, allowing the cell to produce energy, manufacture molecules, repair itself, communicate, respond to its environment, and by doing all this, keep the organism alive.
It is the basic element of all the living beings. And as a cell, it has multiple sub-organelles again, which each one having a different function of its own. Mitochondria, they generate energy. Ribosomes, they produce proteins. The nucleus, it has all this genetic material required. So it's easy to say this way, but it is more complicated than we actually think, because there's so many billions of molecules which are interacting in various ways. And like the DNA code RNA, and RNA again code proteins, which in turn be our hormones, our enzymes, our signaling factors. They create ATP, they utilize ATP to sustain themselves.
You now know the components of a cell, but to get a better sense of what these do, let's see them in action. Let's take the example of a muscle cell in your biceps and understand what happens every time you lift a dumbbell. The moment you decide to lift, your brain sends an electrical signal racing down a nerve into the muscle cell. Gates in the cell membrane open, allowing calcium ions to flood into the cytoplasm, the trigger for muscle contraction. But muscle contraction needs energy. Oxygen from the air you breathed and glucose from the food you ate arrive through the bloodstream into the cell. Inside the mitochondria, they are converted into ATP, which is a fuel for billions of microscopic protein motors, pulling against each other. Multiply this across thousands of muscle cells and your arm bends. But that's just half the story. The effort leaves behind tiny damages in the cell. The lysosomes break down worn out proteins into reusable building blocks. The nucleus responds by selecting the relevant genes from its DNA. Ribosomes read these instructions and build fresh proteins. The Golgi apparatus packages and delivers them exactly where they are needed, repairing the damaged machinery and reinforcing it for the next workout. All of this happens inside a structure invisible to naked eye. One curl, one thought, billions of molecular machines working in perfect coordination. Now, imagine 37 trillion of these cells of hundreds of different types, each taking input from their surroundings and from the neighboring cells, working together, making your eyes see, your heart beat, your lungs breathe, your kidneys filter, and so on.
Each cell is also again modified for its function. Like if you take a nephron, which is a basic cell of the kidney, it has a particular system to filter all the blood as per the gradients. It has various gradients. It can filter all this to form urine, and all this happens like continuously. Your neurons in the brain, they have that capability which can store memories. It can learn new things. The new connections are built and it keeps evolving.
A cell is an extraordinarily complex microscopic factory. Now, that is life. Trillions of tiny factories that grow, reproduce, and run metabolism, together sustaining the larger organism. Now, compare that to a stone. Nothing of the sort is happening there. A stone is just a collection of atoms and molecules sitting relatively idle. About 4 human babies are born every second. Since you started watching this video, dozens of new lives have begun. But as miraculous as birth is, we aren't really creating life, are we? Our babies come from us, one cell from the mother and one cell from the father. Life is creating life. And so, it goes for the millions of species that call Earth home, from a single-celled bacteria to the blue whale. If we trace any of them back far enough, they all share a common ancestor, Luca, the last universal common ancestor, which was itself life. Again, life coming from life. But there has to be a first life, something from which Luca, the bacteria, you, me, and the blue whale ultimately descended. How did that first life come to be? Honestly, we don't have a complete answer, just a hazy hypothesis called abiogenesis. Abiogenesis proposes that about 4 billion years ago, on the young Earth, simple non-living chemicals gradually assembled into creating a complex molecules. Eventually, one of these molecular systems became capable of self-replication and evolution. Somewhere along that journey, chemistry crossed an invisible boundary and became biology. On 1st July 2026, Kate Adamala and Aaron Engelhardt's team at the University of Minnesota built a synthetic cell called SpudCell. It can grow, replicate its genome, and divide. So, did we create life? Let me give you a simple analogy. I can make a car in 2 ways. I can mine the ore, refine the metal, manufacture every component from scratch, and assemble the whole thing myself. Or I can buy a pre-built engine, buy a chassis, bolt them together, and say I made a car. SpudCell is of the second category. Here is why. Several of its essential components are taken ready-made from the pre-existing life. The ribosomes, the protein manufacturing machinery, are extracted from bacteria and placed inside the spud cell. The spud cell cannot make its own energy. It has no waste removal system, no defenses. To replicate once every 12 hours, scientists have to feed it externally and hold it at a precise temperature. Adamala herself called it an incredibly wimpy organism that basically does nothing other than eat and occasionally make a daughter cell.
Recently, about 2 weeks ago, there has been news that scientists at University of Minnesota have created artificial life. They created something called SpudCell. So what is your take on that? And does it really mean that we have created life? If not, then how is it different from natural life or a natural cell?
It's a great invention and it's an attempt at creating life. The DNA still is taken from the viral or bacterial origin. It is taken from that. And these things have been just organized in such a way that this cell can reproduce or make particular functions. But cells, like, it has its own limitations. So it has a way of reproducing. However, the complete functions, proteins, whatever is required for more synthesis have to be still, they require more of improvisation. We have been thinking about how life has originated on Earth. So this is like a model how life has originated. So multiple chemicals put in together over time and evolving into a living cell. And probably we can know how things would have evolved on Earth. So it would serve as a model.
So, no, we did not create life. Life is complex. You would expect nothing less from nature. Life is a result of 4 billion years of relentless experiments by nature, way longer than us, humans. But that doesn't diminish what was achieved. This breakthrough makes the picture of abiogenesis a little less hazy. It shows us that assembling cell-like systems from non-living chemistry is not just a thought experiment. It is something we can actually do and study in a lab. This SpudCell is an extraordinary achievement, but we are just not there yet. Until next time, keep asking why.